everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of News for Normies. I am Millennial Meditations, your host, bringing you a week's worth of news in a relatively short time frame. And I hope you all are staying warm and safe out there today. As I record this, the snow has not started falling in my area yet. However, I know most of the country out west is probably already getting pummeled with it. So if you're shoveling snow, listen to this to help pass the time. Make sure you follow me on all the social medias, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, X, wherever. All those are linked down below. And if you're watching on YouTube, go over to Rumble instead, because you can start the video and then lock your phone and throw it in your pocket and still listen to the audio for free. You can do that on the free version of Rumble, whereas YouTube, you have to pay for that. So Rumble is better than YouTube. Go over there instead. Also, quick note, I don't really have any conspiracy theorists to talk about today, conspiracy theories to talk about, but the tinfoil top hat hasn't made a debut in a while, so figured I'd bust it out again. So, on to the news. Last Sunday, Don Lemon led a mob of communists into a church to protest ICE.
What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus, because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world, is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yes.
Okay, that's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I ask that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Since then, 3 organizers of this protest were arrested, and these people include Nakima Levy Armstrong, who's the former president of the Minnesota NAACP and leader of the Racial Justice Network, Chantil Louisa Allen, head of the Black Lives Matter Twin Cities chapter, and, important to note, a St. Paul school board member. So a communist is a school board member where your kids are being taught. And finally, William Kelly, an anti-ICE activist and Army veteran. Now, rumors are speculating that Don Lemon will also be hit with charges in the near future, but seeing the track record that the DOJ has had so far, highly doubt that's going to happen. Kash Patel, prove me wrong. Yeah. So after this happened, Don Lemon went on camera and started bitching about it and, whining and crying that people were making fun of him, even though he put himself in that situation. And Don Lemon claimed that the people in the church were white supremacists, so it was okay for them to do what they did.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy. And they think that this country was built for them, that it is a Christian country, when actually we left England because we wanted religious freedom. It's religious freedom, but only if you're a Christian and only if you're a white male, pretty much. And so, yeah, I absolutely 100%, but it's an intimidation tactic. And, I said, I don't understand how I've become the face of it when I was a journalist. I do understand that I'm the biggest name there. And I'm also, as I was on with my producers this morning, you and Kylie talk all the time. My producers were saying, I said, how did I become the face of this? And my producer said, Don, you're a gay black man in America.
Yes, that's exactly what these people think about you, and there is no change in their mind. By the way, that white lady, her name is Jennifer Welch, and she's been on other podcasts saying that when Democrats come back into power, they're going to arrest people like myself just for, exposing or espousing their opinions on political matters, because that's what communists do. I'm not joking when I call these people communists. That's exactly what they are, okay? Make no mistake about that. And of course, I lay blame on the left for this protest at this church, because that's just what these, the useful idiots of the Communist Party do. But also, I blame pastors for this happening because they've been weak on political issues for a long time. And I can already hear people screaming, separation of church and state. What about the separation of church and state, bro? Well, let's give you a little history lesson. The separation of church and state was never supposed to be about pastors and clergymen calling out politicians for wrongdoing. It was supposed to be the other way around, keeping the government out of the pulpit. And don't forget, too, that certain denominations of the Protestant church will fly, the BLM flag or the trans flag or anything like that outside their churches, which kind of goes against the fundamental teachings of Christianity and is inherently a political statement, too. So what it boils down to is that when you are a conservative Republican pastor and you say, maybe we shouldn't be taxed this much, then you get the book thrown at you, because that's what communists do. They want to control your life and everything about it. Also, don't let the left, who hates Christianity, lecture you on how you should live and abide by Christianity, because A, they don't know the first thing about it, and B, they'll misquote the Bible to justify their actions, which is exactly what the devil did to Jesus. We have some precedent for this. If you read in Matthew chapter 4, this passage of scripture shows Jesus in the wilderness fasting for 40 days, and the devil tempts him to basically go against God's commands. He says, if you really are the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. And Jesus replies back with scripture, man will live on the word of God. And then the devil also says, if you are the Son of God, cast yourself down from this high place, and the angels will catch you and not let your feet hit the stones below. To which Jesus says not to tempt God. And then finally, Jesus has enough of it and says, quote, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only, end quote. That is from Matthew 4:10. Also, when leftists appeal to emotions for Christians to just allow anyone into the country to do whatever they want to, they must have forgotten that there's a strict policy for how people get into heaven. John 14:6 states, Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. There's also another passage that describes the road to heaven is narrow, but the road to Hades is wide. So again, strict code of conduct on how to get there. And finally, Revelation 21:12 through 14 describes walls and gates around the New Jerusalem, which we don't have time for in this video to get into the full theological, debate about that. But ultimately, there's walls and gates and a strict code and rule book to get to heaven. So don't let the left try to appeal to your emotions so that way they can get what they want. Okay, moving on. Jake Lang, who has been popping up in the news a little bit more lately, was assaulted at a protest in Minnesota.
Jake, you thought it was a good idea, didn't you? Jake, you thought this was a good idea, didn't you? All that shit talking.
From an outside perspective, obviously those who assaulted Jake Lang should be in prison and lay the hammer down on these commies that are destroying our country. However, this isn't the first time Jake Lang has been in the middle of a large-scale protest like this and gained some attention for himself. He first made his name known during the J6 protest, and I recently showed a video a couple months ago of him at an anti-Islam protest in Michigan, where he was surrounded by a bunch of crazy people very similar to this, but this time he actually was physically assaulted. He also stated on X that somebody tried to stab him, but the vest he was wearing protected him from being stabbed, so thankfully he was wearing some sort of body armor. Otherwise, he could have easily died that day. But what I'm saying here is that there seems to not be a good guy here, in my opinion. The leftist commies are protesting on behalf of people who are here committing crimes and stealing our money, but Jake Lang is out here getting people riled up and bringing attention to himself for whatever reason. So, do with that information what you will. Now, speaking of leftist commies, anti-ICE rioters showed up to a federal building in Minnesota equipped with makeshift shields and other gear to fight immigration and customs enforcement officers. Yeah, so those shields and stuff definitely weren't because they just wanted to have a civil conversation about immigration policy. No, it's because they wanted to fight. The Hennepin County Sheriff Department posted about this situation on X, where they wrote, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office deputies and members of multiple assisting agencies have given dispersal orders for an unlawful protest at the Whipple building. Deputies have been on the ground for the last few hours and made several attempts to ask protesters to unblock an access road. The group was clear that they will not unblock the road. Deputies have explained what will happen if they do not comply with lawful orders. We've given them time to move. There have been ice chunks thrown at multiple vehicles, breaking windows. Side note, people could have been hurt if there were people in those vehicles. Deputies have given 3 dispersal orders for an unlawful protest. Individuals who do not comply with orders and those who continue unlawful behavior have been and will continue to be arrested. Please avoid the area, end quote. So, yeah. I don't understand why people are protesting on behalf of illegal aliens who are here stealing our money and assaulting our people. And I'll get to that here in a second. On top of this protest, roughly 100 Minnesota clergy were arrested at a protest located at MSP Airport. So if you want to know my opinions on this, see my first segment here, and that'll just pretty much wrap that up. Also, this Eric Cartman lookalike was spotted in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you live in the neighborhood?
Yep, this is my block, this is my area. I don't go into other people's neighborhoods and try and intimidate them. I protect my people.
Are you giving out your name?
No, I'm okay with that. Our neighborhood showing up.
You guys had a lot of people out here, right?
At least 30 or more.
Yeah.
40 or 50.
That's pretty good for a quick turnout.
To which I say, on one hand, I respect him for standing up for what he believes in. However, if your people are the ones stealing from us and committing crimes against the American people, then you stand with the enemy, sir. At this point, Trump needs to invoke the Resurrection Act. Trump needs to invoke the Insurrection Act, the FACE Act, and Communist Control Act. The DOJ needs to lay the hammer down on these people and quit giving them slaps on the wrist. Okay. And because, the corporate media just salivates at the chance to lie about the Trump administration and what ICE is doing, they lied once again about ICE And this time they claimed that Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested a 5-year-old child. What really happened was the father of the child was being pulled over and decided to run away from law enforcement, leaving his child behind. An ICE agent then stayed with the child as it's fucking cold outside and kept the child safe during the whole interaction. The Department of Homeland Security issued a statement about this on X as well, as you can see here. So yeah, this is why I call them the corporate media, because that's what they are. Legacy media, whatever. They are not true journalistic outlets. They are propagandists, and they want you to just believe everything they say. So I cannot wait for the day when the likes of CNN and MSNBC just finally go away. I cannot wait for that to happen. So, if you agree with me, hit that like button and share with some liberals in your life. So, back to the crime rates a little bit. Apparently, crime rates dropped last year across the country in nearly every category, and corporate outlets are clueless as to why, but if I had to take a guess, it's probably due to deportations. Let's not forget that the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua took over apartment complexes in Colorado. Gee, I wonder why violent crime dropped in Denver when you deport violent gang members. It's weird how that works. Sorry about that. Needed a drink of water. Now, because of all of the goings-on in Minnesota, Tim Walz, as I stated last week, has been hit with subpoenas from the DOJ for all of the fraud that's going on there. And Tim Walz is now begging for money from his supporters after he was hit with these subpoenas by the DOJ. You can see his piss-poor excuse as to why he's raising money, even though he's well off himself. And here is his statement about the Legal Defense Fund, and if you can donate to stand up against fascism, or whatever his retarded ass says. And by the way, if you have $1,000 and want to fight against commies like this, let me know, because I could use the cash. I could use that cash to upgrade this computer, or, pay for some AI software to help edit these clips and cut them up and stuff like that. Because I gotta say, this is like a part-time job doing this that I'm not getting paid for. So, if you want to help a brother out, I would greatly appreciate that. And also, I can't wait to see Tim Walz in handcuffs. I absolutely cannot wait to see that. Oh my god, that will make my week when that happens. Please, Kash Patel, do that soon. I cannot wait to see it. Now, getting out of Minnesota here, the Department of War has admitted they have directed energy weapons, as seen from this post on X as well, which is funny because I remember a show years ago called Future Weapons. I think it came out around 10 years ago, maybe longer, that showed stuff like this. I distinctly remember the one was like a heat wave kind of weapon that just hit a person and cause their like insides to get hot, almost like a microwave, but inside the body, and then just instantly have to move because it was so uncomfortable. Yeah, that was like over 10 years ago, so it doesn't surprise me that this is being posted and talked about. But I can't stress this enough. Use that stuff on these commies in Minnesota to get them the fuck out of the way so ICE can deport criminals who are stealing from us. It's that simple. It is just that simple. Yeah. As I was editing this video and about to export it from the software I use while editing, I was seeing reports on X that another person has been shot in Minneapolis. This time, a man was shot by Border Patrol after he allegedly tried to pull a gun and shoot at law enforcement.
They're doing too much, man, and they keep pushing people, They killed him? Did they fucking kill that guy? Are you fucking kidding me, dude? Not again. Are you fucking kidding me? That guy's dead. Yo, we need people on site.
Just like with Renee Good, if this is true, which definitely seems like with Renee Good it was true, but if this is true, it's pretty common sense to say that if you are being detained by police, do not try to fight back, and God forbid don't try to pull out a weapon like a knife or a gun, because you will get your ass kicked and probably shot. This is going to turn Minnesota into an absolute war zone, and despite the snow and stuff coming in, it's going to get pretty hot there this weekend, I imagine. So, apologies for the jump cuts in this. This is actually the second jump cut in this video this week. You'll see the first one later on in the video. So yeah, if you're in Minneapolis, get out of there. Just get out. It's going to turn bad real quick. And why the Trump administration has not invoked the Insurrection Act yet and federalized the National Guard and sent them in with real bullets is beyond me. And speaking of commies, the state of Virginia is going full-blown communist shortly after Governor Spanberger was sworn in. If you don't remember, Governor Abigail Spanberger is the first woman governor of Virginia, and right after she was sworn in, she signed an executive order essentially barring local law enforcement from cooperating with ICE, as well as several other bills that have been proposed that would reduce sentencing for serious crimes, including, but not limited to, rape, manslaughter, assaulting police officers, and child porn offenses. On top of this, several gun control bills have been introduced to effectively curb legal residents from owning guns. Like that's the end goal with all of those put together. And limiting concealed carry reciprocity from other states. So what does that mean? If you have your concealed carry permit in one state and you try to go to Virginia, it may or may not be valid. Unlike your driver's license, where if you get a driver's license in California and you can drive all the way to New York and not have a problem. You don't have to get a separate driver's license for each state you go through. So, quick side note, Governor Mike DeWine, when he was a politician in D.C. years ago, was one of 2 votes that cost us national concealed carry reciprocity, which would treat your concealed carry permit just like your driver's license permit. Fuck you, Mike DeWine. You are a piece of shit. So, moving back to Virginia, Spanberger has effectively undone everything Glenn Youngkin did, and I could imagine the Founding Fathers are rolling in their graves right now. Virginia has fallen, and I am glad that I have no plans to travel there anytime soon. I am so glad that when I graduated from my online college stuff and drove down to Virginia, it was in May of last year when Glenn Youngkin was still governor. Which, by the way, he spoke at the graduation, and he is a very good speaker. I could see him running for higher office. I'm surprised that he hasn't thrown his hat in the ring for, maybe U.S. House or something. So, if Glenn Youngkin happens to see this, I was there at Liberty University when you spoke. I greatly appreciated what you did. And speaking of the original 13 colonies and states, Maryland is trying to follow suit with Virginia and go full commie. Democrats there are trying to redistrict in a way that would force out the only Republican U.S. House representative from the state. If this happens, I think residents there should sue on the grounds of taxation without representation. There is no state in the country that is 100% Republican or Democrat. There are a lot of states that swing largely one way or another, but there's no state that's 100% red or blue. So either file lawsuits or leave the state. I would say it's probably easier to just leave the state, but we shall see. I'm getting thirsty again. Alrighty. So this one just happened yesterday. If you're a fan of the Olympics, then this will probably pique your interest. Ryan Wedding, a former Olympic athlete turned drug lord, was arrested in Mexico for allegedly trafficking cocaine. Wedding was an Olympic snowboarder from Canada, but ended up in the drug trafficking business after his only participation in the 2002 Olympic Games. Ryan Wedding is alleged to have organized the trafficking of cocaine from Colombia all the way up to Canada, and obviously the United States, as well as being involved with several murders in Central and South America. So apparently he was put on the FBI's most wanted list in like March of last year, so it took them less than a year to find this guy and get him. So good for them, but I, personally would rather have seen Don Lemon arrested this week and not this guy that nobody heard of. So keep it up, I guess, FBI, whatever. Coming to an end here, President Trump is calling for regime change in Iran and has ordered the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group to the Persian Gulf. So if this is anything like we saw with Maduro, Trump is setting up chess pieces to then checkmate the opponent's king. Also, the Iranian government has killed more protesters in the last few weeks, with numbers ranging from 20,000 dead on the low end to 120,000 dead on the high end. It's kind of hard to know right now since the Iranian government has essentially shut down the internet within the country. And, you really can't trust the data that they're telling us either. It's kind of like the numbers that have been reported by Hamas. You can't really trust those because they are heavily inflated. So I guess we're going to see regime change in Iran soon. Buckle up, kiddos. It's going to get interesting. Hey everybody, as I was editing this video, I realized that I pulled a clip from Donald Trump at the 2020 World Economic Forum where he was discussing climate change, not the 2026 World Economic Forum, where this was actually one of the things he talked about when he first spoke. So instead of climate change, this is about the economic turnaround the United States is having with him back in office.
After 12 months back in the White House, our economy is booming, growth is exploding, productivity is surging, investment is soaring, and the United States is in the midst of the fastest and most dramatic economic turnaround in our country's history. Over the past 3 months, core inflation has been just 1.6%. Meanwhile, fourth quarter growth is projected to be 5.4%. The United States economy is on pace to grow at double the rate that was projected by the IMF just last April. In recent decades, it became conventional wisdom in Washington and European capitals that the only way to grow a modern Western economy was through ever-increasing government spending, unchecked mass migration, and endless foreign imports. Virtually all of the so-called experts predicted my plans to end this failed model would trigger a global recession and runaway inflation. But we have proven them wrong. It's actually just the opposite. Under my leadership, U.S. natural gas production is at an all-time high by far. The price of gasoline is now below $2.50 a gallon in many states. Because of my landslide election victory, the United States avoided the catastrophic energy collapse which befell every European nation. The consequences of such destructive policies have been stark, including lower economic growth, lower standards of living, lower birth rates, more socially disruptive migration. That's why issues like energy, trade, immigration, and economic growth must be central concerns to anyone who wants to see a strong and united West. And I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States. All we want from Denmark for national and international security and to keep our very energetic and dangerous potential enemies at bay is this land on which we're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built. They have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember. Home ownership has always been a symbol of health and vigor of American society, but that goal fell out of reach for millions and millions of people in the Biden era because interest rates went up so high. That's why I have signed an executive order banning large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. It's just not fair to the public. We're cracking down on more than $19 billion in fraud that was stolen by Somalian bandits. The situation in Minnesota reminds us that the West cannot mass import foreign cultures which have failed to ever build a successful society of their own. The explosion of prosperity and conclusion and progress that built the West did not come from our tax codes. It ultimately came from our very special culture. We have to defend that culture and rediscover the spirit that lifted the West from the depths of the Dark Ages to the pinnacle of human achievement.
Second, President Trump then took a shot at Canada, calling out their prime minister.
We're building a golden dome that's going to, just by its very nature, going to be defending Canada. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, by the way. They should be grateful also, but they're not. I watched your prime minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. But they should be grateful to us. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements.
And finally, President Trump had this to say in regards to Denmark and Greenland.
In 2019, Denmark said that they would spend over $200 million to strengthen Greenland's defenses. But as you know, they spent less than 1% of that amount. 1%. There's no sign of Denmark there. And I say that with great respect for Denmark, whose people I love, whose leaders are very good. It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. They've acquired, there's nothing wrong with it. Many of them, some went in reverse, actually, if you look. Some had great, vast wealth, great, vast lands all over the world. They went in reverse. They're stuck back where they started. That happens too. But some grow. But this would not be a threat to NATO. This would greatly enhance the security of the entire alliance, the NATO alliance.
Subsequently, after all of this, the Trump administration has secured a deal with Denmark to put U.S. military bases on Greenland. I find it funny how people freaked out about Trump taking over Greenland when this is exactly how Trump operates. He talks big, makes large demands, then scales it back to actually what he wants. The fact that people don't realize this is hilarious to me. Also, it's funny to me that in the week or so leading up to this, Europe sent over some troops to defend Greenland. They sent over 38 guys from a couple different European countries, armed with the crispest, cleanest white flags they could. Because we all know that the European militaries, they just don't hold up to us. So, that's all I've got for this week, folks. Make sure you are subscribed to the channels. Again, all the social medias are down below. Make sure you subscribe to all those. Hit that like button. Share with some normies in your life. And stay warm and stay safe out there. As I record this, the snow is yet to fall. But maybe by the time I actually get it uploaded, that will change. So, with that being said, I'll see y'all next time. Take care.